There's a growing problem for marine life in the world's oceans and waterways: man-made noise. This week, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released a new decade-long plan to try to deal with the way it's affecting life underwater. Special correspondent Kat Wise has our report. It's part of our weekly series covering the leading edge of science and technology.
Beachgoers are drawn to the water this time of year to relax and enjoy some peace and calm. And that's what many describe it's like under the water, too.
I would say it sounds beautiful, relaxing.
I think it sounds like so peaceful, just calm.
But the calm near the surface often belies what it actually sounds like deep beneath the waves, especially if that's where you live. Over the last 100 years, as humans have increasingly used the world's waterways for shipping, defense, and natural resources, among other things, the level and the amount of man-made noises in marine environments has increased. But many species of mammals, fish, and even invertebrates rely on sound to communicate under the water, to find food, mates, and stay safe. And those vital communications in some areas are being drowned out.
People don't really realize how noisy it is. Sound travels very well underwater compared to air, so it can travel very long distances.
Marla Holt is a wildlife biologist for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Seattle. She and other NOAA scientists have been studying the impacts of noise pollution on marine life, from big to small. It's been shown that noise can cause behavior changes, hearing loss, and it can even be fatal. Holt's research focuses on orcas, also known as killer whales, and how they amplify their calls when they are in noisy waters, especially around container ships.
Okay, so here are orca calls with minimal boat noise. And here are their calls with lots of boat noise.
There is quite a difference, and you can see it visually here, too.
Yeah, so they have to really pump up the volume of their calls in order to hear each other.
Many of the orcas Holt studies spend a lot of their time in Washington State's Puget Sound. They and hundreds of other marine species have a lot more than just container ships to contend with. More than 4 million people live around the Sound. The beautiful waterways of Puget Sound are what draws so many people to this area. But all the boating and shoreline development make this a very noisy place to be for marine life. It's an issue that the state of Washington has been trying to deal with for quite some time.
Anytime we touch anything with water, we try to deploy practices that aren't harmful.
Rhonda Brooks works for the Washington State Department of Transportation. She says the state's many ferry terminals and bridges require a lot of work that is often quite noisy, especially when it comes to driving foundation piles in the water.
I think it's only really been in the last decade or so that we've become concerned about the sound that it makes underwater as it's being struck from above the water, and what that sound does to the species that are not only in the vicinity of the pile, but also miles and miles away.
While marine pile driving is a relatively small slice of the overall noise pollution problem, it is one of the loudest and most distressful man-made noises for marine life. Documented fish kills around marine pile driving projects in the early 2000s led to more state and federal noise mitigation requirements. One of the main ways to reduce the noise with pile driving has been through the use of bubble curtains, which are large rings that surround the pile, and the bubbles that are pumped out reduce the sound waves, but sometimes not very much, as little as 30%. They can also cause construction delays, according to Brooks.
As we know, time is money in construction, and so we began to look at practical, innovative ways to attenuate that sound.
So Brooks and other transportation officials sought help from engineers around the state, and they eventually got that help from this man.
Once we understood the principles or how sound was created, then the solution was pretty simple.
Per Reinhall is the chair of the Mechanical Engineering Department at the University of Washington. Over the years, he has developed a number of products, including a next-generation football helmet. But this was his first foray in marine construction, and what he came up with was a double-walled pile. Reinhall showed me how the system works on a model.
So what we've done is we taken the ordinary pile and then we put another pile inside of it. And as you can see here, there's an airspace in between the water cannot get to. And what we do is we strike the inside pile. Now we have a bulge going down, but now it's acting against the air, not the water. So essentially no sound or very little sound is developed.
The other key part of the design is the connection at the bottom of the two piles, seen in this testing prototype, which prevents the sound from traveling into the sea floor.
And that's really the secret sauce of this concept is the flexible coupling at the bottom. So it's essentially a spring, a very, very stiff spring between the outside pile and the inside pile.
Reinhold has turned his innovation into a small startup. The company, called Marine Construction Technologies, has done several tests with the State Department of Transportation, and the results, says Reinhold, have confirmed the design works. At this test, done in 2014, there was a 21 decibel noise reduction. To understand what that means, you really need to hear it.
So this is the regular pile, and this is our new pile. It's a dramatic difference.
It is a big difference.
Yeah.
How much of a difference?
It's a reduction about 90% of the volume. 90% of the volume. So it's a big deal if you're a fish.
One hurdle, though, is the cost. The double-walled piles are about 20% more than a standard single pile, but Reinhold says those costs should be mitigated by the effectiveness of the technology.
The goal of this is to actually save money. If you include everything, if you include monitoring, the time of the projects, permitting, etc., etc. So overall, the project should be cheaper with this technology.
The Reinhold piles have yet to be used commercially, but the state is now evaluating them for future projects. As for the marine life in Puget Sound, there was no comment, but we expect any noise reductions in their waters would be a welcome development. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Kat Wise in Seattle, Washington.
Yes, it would. Kat's report is also part of our Breakthroughs coverage of invention and innovation.